sometimes you blow the safeties to allow steam escape. We give you at least 30 minutes. Oh, longer, yeah, at least probably 30 minutes to an hour, easy, if not more. I have thought about a tank. If I ever go out to my thought is every chance, until I learn more about how to operate it, I'll probably put water
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to Workbench to Mainline. Yeah, okay, now YouTube's up. Mr. Ralph is back with us weathering shows here. He's going to be weathering up a few locomotives over a couple of series, or 3, 4 series, whatever it takes. I just come in here just to be able to let you guys know what's going on next week. Well, tomorrow night be my show, but then February the 18th is the Bill show. We had to move it from this week to next week because Andy's out of town. And then next week it's going to be also on the 19th, it'll be Wednesday. That's Big Bill's finish on his layout series of what he's been doing. And we'll reveal everything to everyone, what he's all done. And February 26th, that's going to be Who's Big Bill Talking To? And he will be talking to William A., which is in the chat here somewhere. I done lost his, everything's going up. All right, so I think Mr. Ralph is ready to go, so I am going to mute my mic, let Ralph have it, and Lloyd is here to moderate and feed Ralph the questions. So, Ralph, it's all yours.
Thank you, John. Well, when I left the last show, I said I was going to weather 2 locomotives, and you guys decided it was going to be the St. Lawrence and Hebert line, the red one, and CN. So the S, L, and H is an Athearn blue box, and it has a whole set of different problems than any of the other locomotives that I do. Cato comes apart completely, but the blue box, the walkway does not separate from the body. So those are the 2 cars or 2 locos that I'm doing. The other thing I wanted to do before we get going is just to go over some of the products that I use. I'll be using Winsor Newton. Here, let me put this down. Winsor Newton gouaches, and the blue on the top is an elastic band that I use to undo them. I also use Vallejo paints. This just happens to be Vallejo Air, but they do have other paints as well. This Vallejo Air is supposed to be airbrush ready. I suggest you thin it slightly and put some, what the hell do they call it? Extender? Yeah, extender in it so that it doesn't dry on you and you don't get it forming on the tip of your brush. The other stuff I'm using is Tamiya paints. And that's where I get my some of my rust effects from. I use there's about 3 or 4 different browns that they have. Just tell me when. And yet there's no picture on YouTube. Bill's saying, it's my fault. I just came in. I just tuned in. It's my fault.
No.
We are. Still a black screen for me. Yep.
Yeah, I can see it.
Interesting. Why does it keep moving on for me?
Twitch is back on too.
I got the locomotive screen up.
I see the red container on your desk.
Do you? Because I don't see anything on my screen. Live? No. Hang on. Let me just, I refreshed twice. Anyway, I don't need the screen. I got the chat, so that's good enough. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that, boys. Little bit of a hiccup. Anyway, like I was saying, I use Tamiya, and they have about 3 or 4 different browns. And a combination, if you're doing a lot of rust, if you're doing a repaint of the whole thing, you may want to put a base of these colors on so that if you do any chipping, you'll have the brown underneath it. That's one thing. The other products I use, MIG Ammo, Streaking Grime, number 1203, and AK, Interactive, Streaking Grime, number 012.
Ralph,
Yes, sir.
John 2618 wants to know: are those Windsor paint oils?
These here? No. Previous ones, the tubes, these ones here are watercolors. They're called gouaches. They're watercolor paints in a tube like a toothpaste. You can also get watercolors in tubes like this. So there's a difference. The gouache has more concentrated color than watercolors do. And I apply these with a sponge. And I had a sponge out here earlier. Where'd it go? There it is. Just a makeup sponge. You can buy them at the dollar store. They come in circles. They come in wedges. Some of them are like a puffball. But there's the two. Now, I don't know whether you see the difference in size. I've trimmed some of this off, but you're looking at the same side of both of them. This one is moistened with water, and this one's dry. And when it's moistened with water, it will also puff up. And right now, this does not feel wet to the touch, but there still is moisture in it. That's why it's that wide. But these are great for doing areas that you want. Well, for instance, I was doing it earlier, trying to save some time. Where are we? I was doing the trucks with the, oh, which one is it? The raw umber on here. So the colors I use are raw umber and burnt umber, raw sienna, burnt sienna. I also have black and white. The black is like a soot or a lamp black, it's called. And the white, any white you want, you're going to mix it anyway. But that's what the sponge does. It instead of using a paintbrush, you dab it on here and you get that finish on there. Now I'll be going back to do this with some burnt umber on this to darken spots, and then come back at it later and I'll show you what I'm going to do there. I took the liberty of taking the red locomotive apart, mainly because I wanted to, let's see, how can I show you this?
Yeah, Ralph,
Yep.
our Big Bill wants to know about using magic markers and colors. Would that be applicable?
Mhm. If he's trying to be funny, he's made his point. To be serious, no, no. Magic markers do not do it. I use a combination of water-based products, acrylics, and I don't classify acrylics as water-based because not all of them are. And then mineral-based, which the AK and the ammo are mineral-based. I also use tube paints, like oil paints. These ones here are called 502 from a company called Abteilung. I also use Winsor Newton. Winsor Newton is the go-to. This one here is what the military guys use. And this is almost the same as the Winsor Newton. The difference between regular oil paints and the Winsor Newton ones, there's more pigment and it's finer grit of pigment in the oil paint. So if you thinned it down to make a wash, you're not going to see grains of color floating in your thinner. You're going to see a full thinned out paint.
I've got a question for you, Ralph.
Okay.
They came out with those pencils, AK.
Yes.
With those pencils, would you use those also?
I
Or
was gonna get to those. Yes,
okay,
you can use them. The difference with those, um, they're like, well, they are watercolors, watercolor pencils. Now, I don't know whether you can see that. That's a sample of all the rusty colors that are in the box. And in the box, I have 37 colors. I can't even fit the box under the camera because there's not enough room. But you get an idea. So a whole bunch of colors. AK Interactive for the pencils. Now, doing it with pencils or these pencils, it's a whole different technique that you're going to have to get used to because it doesn't work the same way as paints. When I did these samples here, I did a little dot at the top of each one of these streaks. And then I took my fine brush with a little bit of moisture in it and I dragged it down along the sides of that dot. And that's the way I got it. Now I've done it on 3 different surfaces here. This first one is plain plastic, styrene plastic. The next one is dull coat. The next one is it's an AK product. They're matte finish. These are all matte finishes. And then the last one is the premium AK. They all work fine, except the problem that I found with those two, if you have to do any masking afterwards, the masking takes the matte finish off. It just lifts it off, a film of paint. In the box, they also have copper and gold and yellow, red, and another one. Well, they don't mix with water. The copper, silver, gunmetal, I'm not bronze, and then there's another silver there. They just don't mix with water. It's the colored one, the actual colored ones that do. And depending on how much water you use, you can literally wash it right off the product, off your model. So it's a process that you're going to have to get used to if you decide to go that route. Now, I've been using watercolor pencils probably about 8 or 10 years already, but before these ones, they were made by a company called Duart. They're made in the UK, and they were pretty good. And I only used the rust colored ones, so Anyway, I took the liberty of taking this apart. There's the base to it. Right? Everybody's familiar with a blue box. I bought this at a flea market. So already the coupler's coming off. Somebody has taken the liberty of removing that bronze piece that goes from truck to truck and attaches to the pickup here, and replaced it with wire. If I was doing this, I would also replace the light bulb that's in here and put an LED in. This Loco comes with the lenses for the front and the back for the lights, but it only lights the front with this here. So if you're going to make it DCC, they have a decoder that sits right on top of here, and you put it on with a piece of double-sided tape, and away you go. You got your lighting, everything will be on the decoder. It's easy to install. You just have to remove the motor, and it comes out fairly easy.
We just lost the feed.
Okay. All right. So as I was saying, one of the things if you're going to change to DCC, there's two little tabs on this bottom pickup that usually make contact with your chassis. So that has to be separated or cut off or filed or flattened down, and then a piece of capped on tape put over the top of it, and then put back in again. And once that's done, then you've isolated the motor. And it's good to go after that. So with that said and out of the way, there's the locomotive shell. Let me turn it this way for a moment. I'm not going to put that right on because I don't want to struggle to get it off again.
Yeah. I don't see Ralph anymore. No, I mean in our live, whereby live. I see you, but I don't see Ralph anymore. Ralph, where did you go?
Alrighty, have no idea we lost Ralph now. I'm having problems with the stream. Yeah, we are having gremlins in here, Gary. I have no idea why. Hopefully Ralph will come back in a minute. He'll realize he's not on. Can you message or email him, Lloyd?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
Okay. Yeah, Sparky, I got the camera off. Just so you guys can see. Make sure everything's still working right.
He's coming back.
Yeah. All right. But anyway, I have no idea what's going on tonight. Do what I can, try and fix it. Hopefully. It's what happens when Andy goes out of town.
Lost me as well.
Yeah. Well, we're back up, Ralph, so I'll let you have it back.
Okay. All right. So there's the shell of the blue box. A couple of good things about this. The cab comes off. The dynamic brake blister comes off. And you can go ahead and do your weathering.
I think we lost him again.
Lost two. Yep. Shit. I don't know what's going on here.
Oh, it's coming back.
Is Ralph still there?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Every time it refreshes, it comes back with just the Tamiya jar.
Huh.
I can see your cab that you took off.
You're alive because your hand just went across the screen.
It's not live on YouTube.
Yeah, it is.
Hmm.
Grab the cab, Ralph. Ralph, grab the cab.
Yet I can't get YouTube to refresh. Not to a live.
Look, I see you. I saw you took the. Now it's offline.
Yeah.
Is there a way I could show? No.
Yeah. You're breaking up.
Yeah. I know. Now.
Okay. So that's okay. That's the shell. And I took the liberty to start doing some uh, um, weathering of it while I was preparing for tonight. And where did it go? I took some photographs of this. This has been faded now, as well as I used the sponge and some of this Vallejo air. It's called USAF light gray. Any color will do. I used a gray instead of a white because I didn't want it to stand out like white does. And I sponged it on. This is roughly where you get the burn from the dynamic brake. So I sponged it on and now it's ready to go. I also took the liberty of, with this here, it's the dynamic brake blister. I took one of the fans off and I'm replacing it with a photo etched one. I can do both, but I was thinking just do one and rust out the other one. Maybe it won't look right. Maybe I'll have to change both of them, but that's some of the considerations you go through when you're doing this. Rust-Oleum camouflage paint is the other product I use. So I have I call it my paint stick. I use tape and I fold over the ends so that the sticky side is up. You glue it on the stick and you can hold it so you can spray paint these things. They were originally silver. You can see here they were silver. And then I started to use the gouache on it. Now, like I said, I was going to start using the other gouache, the dark one, and show you what that looks like. Where did my tile go? There it is. I have an old broken ceramic tile. So I cut it in half, took the broken part off. I use this for my paint palette. So if I can get this open, there we go. Put a dab of paint. This is the gouache now. And in this bottle, I have the window washer from my car. And it's important that you get the one for the winter time. There you go. I had my big gallon of liquid. You use the one for the winter time so that there's no ammonia in it. They put ammonia in the summer stuff so that you get the bugs off your window. And ammonia and or the model paint and so on doesn't always play nice together. So it's best to use the one that doesn't have it. Don't use Windex because Windex has ammonia in it. So I just dampen the sponge a little bit more, and you can see how it swelled up a bit more. This tip didn't get the water like the rest of it did, and that's all right because I'm not using that end. So I dab it on the paint, come over here and spread it out on the sponge, and then apply it to here. Need a bit more moisture. And I'm not doing the whole thing. I'm only doing parts of it. Because what I'm going to do later, and you guys have seen me do it before with the pencil lead. So there's one, and it's got variation of color in it. And you don't want it to be uniform, otherwise it's not going to look right. So there's the two of them. I'm not sure how you're going to be able to see those, but when they go back on the truck, and the interesting part of these, when you take them off the truck, they just pop out. These two pins go into holes in the side of the truck, and I used a little straight bladed screwdriver to get them off. On the Kato one, it's a whole different process. There's little tabs that you have to release before you can get the bottom of it off before the side frame comes out. So in order to make it seem a little bit more realistic, this is a graphite pencil. It's an HB artist graphite pencil. The whole thing is graphite. It's got a coating of paint on it so that you can handle it without getting your hands dirty. I go over the one edge.
Well,
Yep.
Bill wants to know, what is the drying time with this paint? That's
This gouache,
the squash, yeah.
it's almost instant. If you put it on too wet, you'll be able to tell that it's too wet. because it'll take forever to dry. So I don't know whether you can see that properly. If you can see the shine on the edge.
Okay, don't move.
Okay. Well, if you look at the loco that's on the Facebook page, you'll see the trucks. That's how they're done. And then, of course, I use a MIG ammo product again, and I do the bearing plates. And what it is, it's grease and oil finish, and it's kind of shiny when it dries, and that's roughly where your oil gathers on the bearing. This one here has the shock tower on it, but it also has a little bit under here that takes oil, and the same here. And if you wanted to simulate um, a bearing that's been changed, I don't know whether you can see the plate that's on either side. The plate can be painted a different color, and then a little bit less oil on it because it wouldn't be leaking as much. But the plate, normally when you see them done, it's usually a sort of a sky blue color, and then eventually it just rusts right through the blue, and you have the whole thing rusty. So
Ralph, oh, okay.
go ahead.
I've got two questions from Big
All
Bill
right.
again. The graphic brings out the details of the truck.
I don't want to bring out all of the details. All I'm doing is the high point, the top of it.
Okay. And from start to finish, how long would it take to do this project?
The whole locomotive, probably 2 or 3 evenings.
About what, 6 hours, 8 hours?
Well, you have to allow paint to dry and that sort of
Mhm.
thing.
Oh, okay.
Like when I pulled the trucks apart, I painted that with Rust-Oleum camo, and that I let it dry overnight. The fade that I put on here, I want to try and show you what it looked like before I painted it, if it'll show up. Okay. I'm going to share screen if I can. So there it is, nice and clean before I faded it. All I faded was around where the logo, above the logo, just below the dynamic brake. And then there's the dynamic brake in the cab that's been faded. So you can see the difference in color from red. And with that fade, and I think we covered this once before. In this case, it's a red locomotive. So what you want to end up doing is you make a wash of white or gray, a very, very light gray, almost white. And because it's red, and if you look at a color wheel, red is opposite green on the color wheel. So if that's the wheel, the color red is up here and green is down there. And you'll see all the other colors, the opposite colors to them. Red and green are complementary colors. And in order to get this to fade without looking really, really pink, you add green to that white wash that you spray on to make your fade. So this has had like the cab and the dynamic brake there have had the spray misted on, and it has a green added to the mix. If it was a green locomotive, I would add red to the mix, or an orange locomotive, I would add green to the mix. Using the color wheel, what it does is it tones the paint down from this bright red to more of a pastel color without making it go wildly pink. I had a customer wanted to do his own weathering, so he called me and said, "What, Ralph, what do I do for my locomotive? It's dark green." And I said, "You make up your wash and you add a little bit of red to it." Well, he ended up running around with locomotives that were pink because he put too much red in the white fade. He had to strip it all off, and because it's an what do you call it, acrylic that I thin with alcohol, you can use alcohol to take it off. It washes off, not completely, but it does come off. And what I've taken to doing now, I used to use dull coat all the time between my layers of color before I started using this stuff. But now that what's that? Okay, there we go. Okay, so in order to go ahead and use these mineral-based products, I can't use dull coat anymore. The mineral spirits that you use to thin these and to work with them attacks the dull coat base if you dull coat everything. And I used to dull coat between every coat. So what I've taken to doing now is I'm using a Tamiya semi-gloss, or when I make up my fade, because I know I'm going to be doing this next, I end up adding semi-gloss clear to the alcohol and add my drop of green. And so now when this comes, it's ready to go. It has a sort of a semi shine to it. And the same with the locomotive. Whereas before, you guys know what dull coat looks like. So now I can actually put the mineral-based products on there, and because the acrylic will withstand the mineral-based attack, I can go ahead and I can continue. So here's a picture, and I don't know whether how clear that is. That's that's a picture of what the military guys do with this stuff. I'm sort of similar, but I take more off because I don't want all those streaks. What I want is a beaten up, weathered look. So that's the kind of effect you can get with these things. And these are called streaking grime. They're not washes. They're not filters. These are all the different types of paints that you can buy. I try to stay away from those. Filters will change the color of your base paint slightly, and washes will go into the crevices. Well, when I use the streaking grime, I get that to go into the crevices as well. So uh, the wash and the filter are different dilutions of the streaking grime, if that's an easy way to explain it. So where do we go next? I started using this. It's called Linoleum Deck Brown XF79. I like using this for doing rust chips, and I paint it on with a toothpick.
Ralph,
Yep.
Z400. Do you always wash with white or gray, or is that for red engines?
No, that's what I use basically for everything.
Okay, and Bill, what do you think is your biggest challenge when starting a project like this? Is it the mechanical aspect or selecting the colors for weathering?
My biggest challenge is getting them apart. And I try to take them apart completely. As you can see, I've taken the railings off, except I don't have to worry about the railings on the end because they're not in my way. But the railings here will definitely be in my way. I usually try to get the glass out, but whoever had this locomotive before me glued the glass in. And I'm not going to struggle with it and crack the glass. So I put mask gall on it, micro mask. I have another product called Adam Wilder mask. You can get it, even Vallejo makes a mask.
That's a
So
liquid, right?
yes, it is. Um, and it brushes on. This one here is yellow. There's no reason why it's yellow. It's just yellow. He has a white one. He has a blue one. I don't know why he has three different colors. It's all the same product, just a different color. Vallejo, I have a Vallejo one here somewhere too. I don't know where it is. But that's what if I can't get the glass out, I definitely have to mask it, because you don't want to paint the glass and then you're screwed. If when you put your fade on, you're mucking up the windows. So with this, I can go later on when I'm done, take a toothpick, and I can literally, with the toothpick, take this stuff off. I don't have to worry about this piece because this part of the window is covered. But there, it's off. That's how easy it is to get the mask off. So if you can, or like I say, I try to get everything apart so that I don't have to struggle with anything. Now this here, when you're brushing this, don't this is not the brush that I would be using, but when I do my weathering, it's a constant downstroke, down, down, down. Well, the walkway's in the way, so I now have to go up as well, so that I don't get all the stuff that I've taken off here. It's going to get dragged down into this corner. I don't want that. So I'm going to have to take it back up again. And I'll show you that one on the next show. I'll start to weather this with the MIG ammo or the egg.
Two questions, Ralph.
Yep.
Probably you'll get to that one later, but how do you do the chipping technique?
Well, there's two different ways of doing it. The easiest way for me is with a toothpick. I'll show you. Let me get this out of the way. Okay. So there's enough paint on the lid of that jar to take that and you do dots with it. Or put it on its side, and you can do long chips. And usually it's only on the one surface, it doesn't go over. I'm going to continue this on the other side. And then once that's done and we get to the MIG ammo stuff, then I will also have rust streaking down from some of these points. Like from here, there'll be rust coming down from here and a little bit from there, and especially from here because it's got this wide open area underneath it. And the same will be on the other side. The dynamic brake blister, because of all the damage that's here to the paint, you're going to end up with paint chips in here on the doors, in the handles, where the hinges are, And then on the dynamic brake blister, you can actually follow the seam lines with your chipping, and just a little bit. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this. Tell me
Just
if
a
it's in
small question.
tell me if it's in focus. Okay. This is what they call closed cell foam. So it will not absorb water, whatever liquid, it will not absorb it. So one of the things that you can do with this, let's see here. I just want to get a little bit of paint on it. And you can see how the paint is going on the tile. And you can
Just
do
a
the
quick,
same. You
sorry.
can do the same on the edges of the cab, the hood, and if you want, you can wash it out and or just roll it over and use another spot. But I have the room that I'm sitting in, my layout room, was originally my son's sound studio that I built for him. So on the ceiling, I have this egg crate foam. And if you ever see any packaging that comes with the egg crate foam in it, save it, because that's what that is. And you can use that to paint with.
Ralph, staying on the same subject,
Yep.
I've heard you mention something about using Windex, or what about the sea salt? Would you use that on locomotives or?
No,
Okay.
no. The sea salt is not in HO scale. It doesn't scale down enough. And using table salt, uh, using a salt technique for chipping works best when you're repainting something, because then you would paint the whole thing this dark color brown, and then there's two ways of doing it. So you paint it all brown, and then where you want the rust to be, so you coat it with a little bit of Windex, well, Windex, washer fluid. You can spray it on and sprinkle some salt where you want it. Let it dry. When it's dry, then you come back with the body color paint that you want to put on. When that's dry, you rub the salt off. You come back with a wet brush and you get whatever's still stuck under the paint to wash off, and you have salt chipping. The chipping that you get from that is out of scale as far as I'm concerned. It's out of scale for HO. It'll work on bridges, on something much bigger than the locomotive. It'll look fine, but it won't look right, because if you're only going to do a corner, then you're better off taking this and adding it to the corner and let it go on. Now, it didn't go on very much because I don't have the paint's drying out, but that's the idea of it.
Okay. One more question, Ralph, from
Mm.
Michael Lambertino. Um, Ralph, question: when weathering a black tanker or loco, would you use a whitewash?
You can use white, you can use gray. Actually, you could probably use a combination. Do a gray wash first, and usually when I do it straight down first, like straight down to the top, and then I come out at about a 60-degree angle and shoot the top corner and let it go down the side a little bit. The same process on the locomotive as you would a tank car. And then once you've got that on, let it dry. You may have to go back and give it a second coat. My mixture is usually about 10% paint and 90% alcohol. So it's going to be very, very thin. the other thing on top of that, do the gray first, do the gray first, and then come back with a whitewash and do just the top. So you have a variation of color from white to gray to black. Because normally when you see those cars, they are nice color underneath where the sun and rain don't hit it, but on the sides is where it gets all the weathering and the sun beating down on it. I hope that answered your question. So I had some photographs, maybe I'll show them next time, of the N scale stuff that I've been doing for one of the guys on our regular chat. Where are they? Okay. All right. Now this is N scale. Now I repainted the whole thing. Come on. No, it doesn't want to switch. There we go. So you can see where I've done some paint chipping up around the brake blister. Also an SD40, but this is an SD40T-2, not just a SD40-2. This is N scale. A little bit closer. These are my favorite ones. These ones. Tom asked me to do Norfolk Southern for him, and I offered to do, instead of Norfolk Southern, Calgary Southern. So the black one, it looks just like a Norfolk Southern, except instead of the horse, it has a beaver, and CS instead of NS. And this is a UP that's been patched out and renumbered. And you can see some of the chipping in on the roof, along with sponged on gouache to give it a rusted paint sort of thing. Not that it's chipping, but the rust is coming through the paint. And then the black on top is the powders that I use. There's some more chipping around the fan housing here. Where's the close-up of the cab? There it is. So there you are. We'll close it off on that picture. You can see the paint chipping I did, and I did it with a toothpick, and then with a makeup sponge with the gouaches to get that rusted through look. And the yellow is dirty because I used the AK products on top of it and washed it down with the thinner. And that's the finished loco. So that's what we're going to end up with when I'm finished. So I'm going to continue on doing the fan housing on this. I'm also going to do a little bit of the rusting. Let me get rid of this. A little bit of the rusting in here with the sponge to take away a lot of that stark white. And then I'll show you how I do the AK stuff. I'll do one side and I'll show you how I do the other side, so that you have a comparison before and after. All right, so we shall see you next month, I guess. And tomorrow is Johnny's show at 9 o'clock. Yeah. And next, is it Tuesday? The Bill show? Oh, okay. Johnny's going to tell you all about the upcoming shows.
All right, Ralph, I appreciate that. Lloyd, appreciate you coming in, helping out on the questions.
Sorry, I couldn't argue with Ralph. I'm not Andy.
Well, I thought you was going to give him a little bit of argument there, but hey. All right, sorry about the interruptions on the show, but what I'm going to do is I did record the full thing, so I'll delete out what YouTube posts up and repost the recording. That'll probably be within a half hour from now, so just let everybody know we got my show tomorrow night. 18 is going to be the Bill show, February 18. Instead of this week, Andy was out of town, so he couldn't do the show. Wednesday, the 19th, will be the finish to Big Bill's layout series on what he's been doing with his layout in the peninsula. And then Thursday, we're back to mine. And the 26th of February, we have the Who's Big Bill talking to, and he will be talking to William A. So tune in next Tuesday night for the Bill show. And we shall see you then tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, for my show. And let's see if I can't straighten out this internet, because I think that was part of my problem, was my internet is actually acting up a little bit. See what I can do about that. So y'all have a good evening, and we shall see you tomorrow night.
Night, guys.
Night.